In this video, I am going to be talking to Sara Hull, who is one of our solicitors that helps us buy houses.
I just can't let you go. Lord knows that I've tried to. You said I was the only one. No one likes being lied to.
Hi, Liam. Good to see
Sarah.
you.
Wow, brilliant. Nice. Right, Sarah, thanks for having me down to your wonderful offices here in Chelmsford.
It's my absolute pleasure. Welcome back.
It's going to be an absolutely brilliant interview, and we're going to be talking about all the fun, interesting legal stuff to do with buying a property.
Yeah.
So before we kick off, do you want to just introduce yourself, who you are, what is it you do, and who are Burkitt's?
Absolutely. So I head up the residential property team here in Chelmsford. So we deal with this transaction from start to finish in relation to any residential property transaction, be you a company or an individual buyer or whatever. Burkitt's are a top 100 firm, so we've got all the specialisms there. So if there's something a client needs that's not in my remit, I know there's a colleague that I can trust that I can hand them over to help them out with that side. So
Brilliant.
It feels like we're looking after our clients for the whole approach.
For the whole thing. So you don't
exactly.
just do property, business,
planning,
corporate planning,
the whole
you
thing.
name it, come to you guys and you cover a whole wide range
Absolutely.
of services. Now I first started to use Burkitt's and you as my solicitor, I think back in 2010 maybe, something. Can you remember?
Must be about then, I think.
So we're
yes.
like 8-9 years.
We
now.
are.
And you know, you've been one of our key members of our power team, you know, involved with many of our property purchases. So thank you very much for,
That's my pleasure.
for working with us
Yeah,
and making
and
the whole process
It's
really smooth.
nice to guide people through the process, particularly if it's for the first time, because I mean, let's face it, whenever any of us move house, we can't really remember what happened last time.
Exactly.
So if it's a new venture because you're doing it as a buy-to-let or a company or something, again, it's a slightly different scenario. So it's nice to guide people through the process
Brilliant.
so that they understand it all along the way. Really.
Okay, so look, we've got some great questions
Yes.
here. It's going to be a deep dive to really
Yes.
teach our viewers on the entire buying process. So what is a conveyancing solicitor?
So effectively, we take you from the you not owning it to you owning it, I guess,
Oh,
at the
okay.
end of the day. So along the way, we check the title to make sure that that's all okay. We do the searches. We raise inquiries that we need to raise to make sure that if there was planning required or anything else, that's all ticking the boxes along the way. The end result being that you end up owning a property that you know is a good property to own. And that's the point, is that we're not going to do it if it's not right.
Yes, so you're going to make sure the client is buying something that's going to stay in the portfolio for many years to
Yeah.
come, and there's no issues.
And the point is that when then they come to sell it in the future, as and when, they shouldn't have anything to worry about. And really, that's the idea behind it all.
So you mentioned searches there.
Yes.
What do you mean by searches?
So we do several searches. So we do one with a local authority. That's to check things in relation to planning, make sure that there's been no breaches of that we need to worry about, that there's nothing coming up that might mean that we go, we might not want to buy that now. And it also makes sure that the roads outside are public roads, so we don't have any issues with rights of way and all that kind of thing. We also do an environmental search now, because that's important to people. We all worry about things flooding and all that kind of thing, and it can make a difference to the buildings insurance. So what we don't want is a client taking out an insurance policy which then doesn't turn out to be valid because they didn't declare that they might be somewhere that might flood and things. So it's just finding out as much information as we possibly can about the property so that we can guide the clients as to what extra precautions they might need to take or what they need to know just moving forward, really.
They might need to take out insurance, something
Exactly.
along those lines to
Yeah.
protect themselves in the future.
Yeah.
Brilliant, good. How long do those searches normally take?
They vary. Lots of them now are all done on the internet, so your environmental searches, all that kind of thing, probably come back within about 48 hours in reality.
Quick.
Yeah, quick. Life's moved on in conveyancing, only just. Local search is very dependent upon the local authority, but as a rough kind of guide, worst case scenario, about 10 working days really. If you're in the middle of London, come back in 3 working days. So, but that's very dependent upon the area that the property you're buying is in. So,
brilliant. So, I'm a client.
Yes.
I found a house.
Yes.
I put in my offer.
Yes.
I've got it 20% below market value. It's my first property. It's going to cash flow me 500 quid a month profit. What's the buying process? What are my next steps in terms of engaging with you, Sarah?
Yeah. So the important thing is that we need to do all the boring bits to start off with. So we've got to do the know your client stuff, all the money laundering stuff, but the sooner we get that all out the way, it's done. We never have to do it again. So it might
just talk us through that. So know your client.
That means
AML. So what's required from the client?
So we will need a copy of a passport or a driving license or
Okay.
something, together with a bill that's got your name and address on it that's in the last 3 months. But literally, once that's done, it's done. Can be a bit tedious at the beginning, but once that box is ticked forever. Then it's a case of us waiting for the contract papers to come in. So as soon as they come in, we'll review those, we'll raise inquiries, we'll get the searches off. And the important thing is to keep the process moving. I think the problem is that we need to do all the boring bits to start off with. So we've got to do the know your client stuff, all the money laundering stuff, but the sooner we get that all out the way, it's done. We never have to do it again. So
just talk us through that. So know your client.
That means
AML. So what's required from the client?
So we will need a copy of a passport or a driving license or
Okay.
something, together with a bill that's got your name and address on it that's in the last 3 months. But literally, once that's done, it's done. Can be a bit tedious at the beginning, but once that box is ticked forever. Then it's a case of us waiting for the contract papers to come in. So as soon as they come in, we'll review those, we'll raise inquiries, we'll get the searches off. And the important thing is to keep the process moving. I think the problem is sometimes with conveyancing is that people think there's these long gaps where nothing happens. And it's disconcerting for the clients because they go, oh, I don't know what's going on.
So it's my keys.
Exactly. So it's a case of keeping the communication open and the information flowing from us to them. So sometimes even if there's nothing to tell them, it's just nice to be told, I haven't actually got anything to tell you because we're waiting for this and we're waiting for that.
A quick email.
Just
every now and then.
Yeah.
To the client. I know
just
you
to
were
say.
Very, very good with us. You always told us what was going
So
on.
even if it's just we haven't had replies to inquiries yet, we're chasing them. We'll chase them again on Monday if we hadn't had them in. But just so people know what's going on, because it's those gaps in between where people get anxious or go, oh, is it all going wrong? Is it all right? So it's, well, in any scenario, isn't it? It's about keeping the lines of communication open, really.
Okay, so brilliant. So AML docs are done.
Yep.
Know your client's done. Searches are done.
Yep.
What's next?
So generally speaking, by the time we've raised inquiries and we've got the searches back, if people are having a mortgage offer, that will have arrived. So we can work through the requirements of the lender as to if there's anything that they've raised additionally that we might need to go back on. It's then a case of preparing a report. Most people like that by email now because we all live by emails, but that's not to say that's how you've got to have it. If clients would like to come in and sit down and talk about it, and particularly if there's some peculiarities to a transaction, sometimes that works better, because if you're all sitting physically in the same room looking at the same documents, then sometimes that still works better. But then we do a report and then we work towards exchanging contracts. That's what makes it legally binding. That means none of us can pull out anymore. And it's that exchange of contracts that sets your completion date. And so completion date's collecting the keys day.
So brilliant. So how long typically is it from client saying, be my solicitor, help me buy this house, through to exchange? Now, I know it depends.
It depends hugely. We can do it in 4 days or we can do it in 4 months.
Right, okay.
The average, I would say, is about 6 to 8 weeks.
So 6 to 8 weeks to get up to exchange.
Yeah.
And just so our viewers know, when you exchange on a property, what's required on the day of exchange?
So,
there's some cash that's
absolutely.
needed.
So to exchange contracts, we need to have a deposit. Generally speaking, that's 10% of the purchase price. We can sometimes negotiate it a bit lower, but always work on the basis that it's going to be at least 5%, because at the end of the day, the seller wants to see that you're making some sort of commitment. So that's the cash that we need at that point. We can set the completion date. It can be a week later, 2 weeks later, however long you want it to be, really. It's all a part of agreeing between the parties.
Once you exchange, that's it. That's
That's
a legal
it.
binding contract. If you pull out,
You lose your deposit.
10%, you lose your deposit.
You do,
So be
yeah.
very sure that you want
absolutely,
to
that's the time to take a deep breath and go, do I or don't I?
Yeah. Make sure the numbers are fine.
Absolutely.
Make sure you've got the mortgage offer.
And that all your finances are in place.
Yeah.
So again, you know, if you've got to draw money down from a savings account or an investment or something somewhere else, just make sure that you're giving yourself plenty of time to get those monies in time for completion, really.
So I really hope you are enjoying this amazing interview with Sara Hull. If you've got any questions right now, please put them in the comments below. Please also like and share this video so we can get this message out to lots more people and help you and others on your property and business journey. We exchange, and then it's really full steam ahead for completion.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. What happens on a day of completion? Like, what's that process on the day
So
it all comes together nicely and then you're able to actually give the keys?
Yeah, so what we tend to do is we tend to ask the clients to send the balance that we need for completion at least 2 working days before completion, because as we know, the banks are not always brilliant.
Yeah.
And that means if it goes a bit wrong the first day, we've got another day to sort it out, because we want completion day to be as stress-free as possible, really, for everybody's sake. We always arrange for the mortgage monies to come the day before, so that we know, for instance, if you're completing today, that last night all the monies are here, so this morning we can send those off first thing. Banking system opens at 9:30. We can get those in the system and people can have their keys by lunchtime. And it's just a case of you know, spending that couple of days just getting things organised so that it's an easy process for everybody, and a lot less stressful, because it's taking the stress out of the transaction that's as important as anything else sometimes.
Brilliant. So actually it's very simple, isn't it? Buying property here in the UK, yes, you're going to have the odd difficult case, but for anyone that's watching this that's brand new, get a great solicitor like yourself. You actually go and do all the bloody hard work, all the nitty gritty. You make sure you deal with the mortgage company, you deal with the broker, you deal with the vendor solicitor, and really what you deliver to me and people buying property is a shiny set of keys on completion day.
That's the aim.
Yeah, it's exciting. Good. Good. So we've covered off the buying process. What other types of solicitors are there in property?
So we have all sorts of different solicitors, really. So as I was saying earlier, we've got people that specialise in planning. So if there are planning issues that you need to cover off, for instance, you're thinking of extending or whatever, then we've got specialists that can deal with that. Depending on how big a project you're looking at, we've got a residential development team. So if you're looking at a bigger kind of project, maybe where you're buying land that you're then going to develop, we've got a team that can deal with that. We also have our commercial property team. So let's say you're buying a property, but you're buying a piece of land at the side that you might take an option on. So you might not want to buy it right now, but you might want to reserve the right to buy it if that's what you want to do. Commercial property can sort that out for you. So it's very much just making sure that we can look after every aspect of the transaction and being aware about what parts of the transaction might amount to.
Who you might need to bring in to help assist in whatever's going on at that time. And it's really important for our viewers to know that. If you're buying commercial, you're going to go and see a commercial type solicitor, etc., etc. Brilliant, good. And you focus purely on residential?
That's right, but we sit with our colleagues, so we're in an open plan office, so we sit with our colleagues in commercial, in construction, in resi development. So it means there's a nice atmosphere, so we all get on really well. So if there's ever a query about anything, then it's no bother at all to walk around the corner and say, what do you think about this?
So it's a full package you offer.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is that there are specialists in each area. It's not somebody trying to pretend that they can do everything, because none of us can in reality. And I think that's important for clients, is that they know that if they need that bit of specialist help, then there is a specialist there that can look after them and take them through that side of the process.
That's really, really good. Okay, so let's see what else we've got here. So let's talk about HMOs.
Yes.
Because a lot of our viewers are going to do single lets, they're going to do HMOs.
Yes.
Can you help my viewers with a HMO purchase?
Yes.
And what are some of the things that you need to be aware of now when buying a HMO?
Yeah, so the planning regulations have changed a bit in relation to HMOs. So, and that's only because the HMO market has developed really to some extent. So you'll find that some local authorities don't require planning at all. They're quite relaxed about it. You find some will require a licence. Obviously, there's lots of areas in London now where they're piloting these different schemes as well. So it's really on a case-by-case basis as to what's needed. The thing to be aware of sometimes is that it's worth doing that bit of background work to start off with, because if you're going to have a mortgage, the lender is going to raise whether or not you need an HMO licence.
Yes.
So it's always worth finding out from the local authority what their requirements are, so that when that mortgage offer comes in, we can go back to them and say, look, we know you don't need a licence, there's already a licence, we're only converting it into 3 properties or whatever. But it's always worth doing that background research beforehand, really, because each local authority is very different. Yeah.
They now say with HMOs, which is house and multiple occupancy, and we did many of these in the beginning.
Yeah.
Converting a 3-bedroom house into a 5 or 6 bed, and at that time, unless it was on 3 stories, we didn't need a licence. And now in Colchester and Ipswich, if you're on 2 stories or 1 story. And if there's more than 5 people living in that property, you need a HMO
exactly.
license. It's not difficult to get,
no,
because you just go apply. You make sure you've got the right fire doors, the right fire alarms, all that sort of stuff going in the property. But if you don't have it and you don't know, you're not going to get your mortgage.
No, and that's why it's worth doing that background research first, because as you say, it used to be all dependent upon how many floors the property was on. It's not anymore. It's to do with how many people are going to be living there, and it's building that cost factor in too, so that if you know you're going to need to change the fire doors and you're going to need to do this and you'll need to do that, it's all about knowledge and information, really. So if you know that that's what you're going to need to do, have that information in the first place, so that you can factor that into not just the cost of it, but how quickly you're going to be able to get people into the property after completion, really. Nice.
Okay, brilliant. So, what is a title deed?
Well, they sound fancy, don't they? So a title deed is basically a piece of paper that proves you own a property. Okay. So it's all public information now, in general. So it's all registered at Land Registry for the vast majority of cases. There are still some bits that are not registered
online,
at
do you get a physical copy?
You get a physical copy.
And it's online?
Yeah. I can down a copy of your title deeds. You can download a copy of my title deeds. Right. So if you want to do a bit of research into a property you're thinking about buying, there's that option to download a copy.
So let's say our viewers are walking along the street and they see a house, no one lives there. What's the process for them to find who owns that house?
So all they've got to do is put the address in on the Land Registry website. The Land Registry will send you a copy of the title and the plan. You pay a whole £3 for each of those. So it's not a massive investment just to do a bit of digging around. Nice. But that's the piece of paper that proves that you own the property, tells you what mortgages and things are on there, which obviously you don't particularly have to worry about because they'd all be gone. But the important thing is that it also tells you about what covenants might be on the property. And we were talking about HMOs a moment or two ago. The problem can sometimes be that even if the local authority give you an HMO licence, that doesn't mean that you're not breaching some covenants that might be registered against the property. So it's very much a twofold process, really. So
talk us through what is a covenant? What does that mean? What is that? So
a covenant is either something you've got to do or something you can't do. There's 2 distinct categories. So, for argument's sake, a covenant on your house might tell you you've got to mend the fence on the left-hand side, but it might tell you that you can't do something else. Okay. So the important thing with covenants in relation to HMOs and things is that it might say that the property is only allowed to be used as a single dwelling. Well, that means one family's got to live there. So you can't then... it would be in breach of the covenants then to use the property for 6 different people to live.
Can you get covenants removed?
Generally speaking, you can't get them removed. Once they're there, they're there. Okay. You can take out an indemnity insurance policy, but generally speaking, that's quite difficult to start off with because what they insure, it's like any insurance, they want to know how big the risk is. So they might require that the property's been used as an HMO for a certain period of time before they'll agree to give you insurance for it. Insurance policies are like anything, you know, we bump into each other in the car on the way home, you go, there's my insurance policy, just let them sort it out. So it's a sticking plaster, really. It's not an ideal scenario.
And you find those covenants out from Land Registry when you download the title.
Absolutely.
It will just be there, plain and simple.
Yeah.
These are the restrictions of what you can and can't do.
Yeah, and Airbnb has brought up a few things as well.
Yes.
Because, of course, people buy flats or they buy houses or whatever, no intention of ever living in them. And that can there was a case where that was suggested that could be classed as business use because it was never your intention to use it as a residential dwelling. So it's those kind of things you need to look out for as well. So
brilliant, good. This is why we as property investors, we need experts like you to sort this out for us, which is brilliant. Okay, great. Let's have a quick chat now in relation to buying property in your individual name versus a limited company.
Yes.
So there's been lots and lots of changes over the last 6-12 months, and more people now, due to the tax laws that have come into play, and you can't offset your mortgage interest rate against your tax bill. More people now, investors, are buying in a limited company. Let's just have a chat about that.
Yeah. So the thing to bear in mind is obviously if you're buying as an individual and you already own a property, there's the extra stamp duty to take into account. If you're buying as a company, obviously you're in the same scenario, but the tax benefits are still better. What you've got to bear in mind is, in particular, if it's a company that's only just been set up, is that there's every chance that the lender will require you to enter into a personal guarantee as well.
Okay, yeah.
So whilst the initial liability may attach itself to the company, you are effectively, as a person, backing that.
Yeah.
So that's just something to be aware of, because that can obviously have an impact on your personal life, as it would suggest. It depends. All depends on how much you're borrowing, which lender you're going with, and all that kind of thing. But generally speaking, for the first few purchases, a lender's going to expect you to.
Every HMO that I've bought in the property, every deal we've done as a property investor, we've needed to give personal guarantees.
Yeah.
And it's just part and parcel of being a property investor.
Yeah.
But that's where you get the rewards. And ultimately, this is why you need to make sure the properties you're buying
are right.
The numbers are right and you're crystal clear.
And again, it's all back to that research. You know, it's all back to making sure the title is good, so that if you decided you want to sell it, you can, and that you've done your research and know that it's going to be a good investment.
So you're finding more clients now are buying in limited companies?
Yes,
property
definitely,
investors?
definitely, yeah.
And again, in terms of limited company, you just need to make sure the company's registered.
Yes. Who the directors are.
Directors, shareholder, structure of the business.
Yes, exactly.
Good.
And the important thing is as well, sort of as a side step to that, is to make sure that whichever solicitor you instruct is on the panel in terms of acting for limited companies, because the lenders have got quite fussy about this lately, and they've really limited the number of solicitors that they have on their panel. So we're lucky enough to be on all of them, but don't take it as a given. That's all I'm saying, is don't get halfway through the process and then...
So if I'm a new investor and I'm speaking to my mortgage broker and I'm going to get a mortgage with, it looks like Kent Reliance is my best option, the first question I need to ask you is, are you on the Kent Reliance board?
We are.
And if you're not, I'm going to need to get someone else. But again, you're on all of them anyway.
Yes.
But not all solicitors are.
No, and the last thing you want to find out is that because sometimes you start the process of buying the property and then it may be a couple of weeks until you decide who you're going to use as a lender. You don't want to end up paying them for doing that bit and then effectively starting all over again, because you then need to instruct somebody that's on the Kent Reliance panel or whoever.
Before you decide on
it's all in the research, in the research, and the planning ahead of it, really.
So what is stamp duty?
So stamp duty, I'm afraid, is one of those taxes we just have to pay when we're buying a house. So it varies depending upon the purchase price. Obviously, if you buy a property that's beneath the threshold, you don't have to pay it, but there aren't very many of those. The important thing is, I think, is that if somebody's proposing to do something, best thing to do is just give us a call. We can prepare a quotation for you, which will set out our fees, the stamp duty, the land registry fees and everything. So it's very much on a case-by-case basis, really.
So people just need to know it's a tax. You got
It's
to
a
pay
tax,
it,
yes.
and that's just the way it is.
It is the way
it's
it
all
is.
part of the purchase price. Anyway.
There can be some differences. So if the property's got a part commercial use, then that can make quite a big difference to the stamp duty. But that's why it's very much on a case-by-case basis, really, as to how much is payable.
Great. Well, look, you have done amazing work for me, my business partner,
Thank
Jay, and all the years that we've been working.
Been an
with
absolute
you.
pleasure.
You are literally at the top of your game. We recommend a lot of people to you. We talk about Sarah a lot in what we do. You know, you've been absolutely fantastic. So why should people viewing this right now, why should they come and use Sarah?
I think the point is that we have done it. We've helped you along the process. We've helped lots of your people that you're working with through the process. And it is that we care very much. It is not just a transaction. We do care about our clients very much, and we want to make sure that they've got all the information they need to get from A to B in the best way that they possibly can. And we'll guide them as much as we can along that process. If we need help from other colleagues within the firm, then that's available to them. And we know when there is, it's about having that knowledge about knowing when there's something else that we need to be thinking about, so that people go into a transaction with their eyes wide open, really. I think that's the point.
And I must say, you're very quick at what you do, and that's key, isn't it, for investors?
Yeah.
We want to work with a solicitor that works at our pace and is very proactive, and you are extremely proactive.
And I think the thing is now is that, you know, sometimes we make a bit of a cheeky offer for a property. Well, if we make a cheeky offer, they don't want to wait 6 months for us to exchange contracts. So you've got to be proactive, and you've got to be seen to be doing what you should be doing, so that if the vendor rings their solicitor and says, is anything happening or not, they can categorically say, yes, they've raised inquiries, they've done this, they've done that. And I think that's a big part of it, really, is that everybody needs to know that the transaction's moving forward and that the clients are kept informed all the way along as to what's happening.
So if the viewers,
yes,
because they're going to want to get hold of you,
yes,
how do they get hold of you, Sarah?
So details are all on the website, but my email address is Sarah without an H, -hull@burkitts.co.uk. My assistant is Angela, who will be happy to help you as well. Direct line here is 01245 211 342. I think Liam's going to put the details on there anyway, but any queries, or if people are just wondering about whether
just want to have a chat with you.
Just want to have a chat.
A nice consultation,
Yeah.
send you an email, give you a call,
Absolutely.
start the dialogue,
Exactly.
and see what happens.
Oh, they just want a quote. They're going, right, we've looked at this, this and this, but what's this bit going to cost? Then absolutely no cost to them. We can have a chat, we can send them a quote and give them a little bit of guidance as to where to go from there.
Brilliant. Good. Well, let's hug it out. It's been
Yes.
awesome, yeah?
Lovely to see you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Take care.
Thanks very much for tuning in to this episode. If you have liked this video, please now share the video with a friend or family member. Let's get this message out to as many people as possible. Please add in a comment or a question below, and also give me a big thumbs up. Now remember to stay tuned for more videos every Tuesday, Thursday and Sunday at 7:30 p.m. and go ahead right now and watch another one of my videos.